Lux your way with the Lux Cravings boxes from Taco Bell. There's the classic $5 box, the indulgent $7 box, and a whole new obsession in the $9 box, the Flamin' Hot Grilled Cheese Burrito. Try the Lux Cravings boxes at Taco Bell today.
Hey Bronco Nation, this is Boise State football wide receiver Ben Ford. I've had to face some setbacks on the field this past season, but toughness isn't about staying down. It's about getting back up. I am proud to represent Lithia Ford of Boise, where you can find the largest selection of Ford trucks that are built tough and, like me, handle the hits and keep pushing forward. Come check out the incredible inventory and competitive pricing at Lithia Ford of Boise. And when you buy here, you're not just getting a truck, you're supporting Boise State athletics and Lithia Ford NIL partnerships. Come see us at Lithia Ford of Boise, where Ford begins in Idaho.
Find your sun with Sun Cruiser Vodka Iced Tea. Made with real iced tea and real vodka. Cold, refreshing, and made for moments like these all year long. Let the good times cruise with Sun Cruiser.
As sports fans, we may cheer for different teams, but there's one thing that we can all agree on. We want the game to be big. And with 3 levels, 30 cabanas, a 143-foot screen, 6 clean pools, and endless cold drinks, it doesn't get any bigger or any better than Stadium Swim in Las Vegas. All sports, all seasons. It's more than a pool deck. Stadium Swim. It's the only thing like it in the world.
Oh, there we are. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another night out west, Sunday, May the 10th, special Mother's Day edition. I expect the number of mothers watching to be in the thousands here. So welcome to all of you. Hope you enjoyed your special day. In all seriousness, hopefully it was a nice day for any mothers out there watching, listening now or later. And for you guys listening, that you made it good for the mothers in your lives. All right, so tonight's episode, as all, are sponsored by Circa. You just saw the ad right there, Stadium Swim. Coming up on that time of year, right? It's May out there. It's certainly nice in Vegas. So you headed out there for business, pleasure, whatever it is. Head out to Circa Sports, best sports book in Vegas, mobile betting, and certainly Stadium Swim. Also sponsored by Sun Cruiser. Got another message from Lee today, Lobo fan, with a drink in hand of Sun Cruiser. Love to see it. We're spreading. It's spreading. Okay, as for tonight, we see we're slowly but surely, we're starting to tweak some things here. And we got the little rundown on the screen here, right there, right-hand side. Okay, so work in progress. We're going one piece at a time with our graphics, updating them. You see the new logo. We see the rundown on there, working on the graphics behind me. I had some conversation with BJ today actually about that. He's working on it. It's not something you can just do in 5 minutes. And so that's why it's not behind me yet, but we'll get there. And just like this stuff here, I wish it was as simple. Maybe for some of you it is. I'm certainly no tech genius. So this was a work to get that on there, as basic as it is. So, I can mess around, I guess, moving forward with the template to shrink the font a little bit and get a little bit more information on there instead of just like a couple words. But for now, I just wanted to have that on there. Looks good. And, we'll go with that. Also, subscribe to the show, please. If you have not subscribed so far, please go subscribe to the Another Night Out West. I know the banner at the bottom there says Another Night in the Mountain West. I will actually see if I can stop that or change that or whatever it is, right? Or edit that. Probably should have done that before the show. But again, like I said, one thing at a time here, right? One thing at a time. So Jason, happy to see you in here. Big Rebel fan. Jason does great work talking about his beloved Running Rebels. And happy to see Jason in here. Anybody else, get going in the comments when you guys roll in. Of course, plenty of you watching after the fact. Totally fine as well. That's the purpose that BJ and I talked about that. We knew we were going to have plenty of viewers coming in later on in the week, and that's what's happened every episode so far. Plenty of things to talk about tonight. As you can see on a screen right now, go Broncos, Perry. I actually, and if I would have added a few more things. So as BJ and I talked about it, you see the little banner there, And as the rundown gets lower, it gets a little bit darker in the background. If I had another thing or two to put on there, I definitely, what's up, Creamy, would have had Boise on there because they were in the news this week. So despite them not being on the rundown, I am going to talk Boise. All right. And you see some of the other things that we're going to talk about on there. So let's start with this. And this was actually a week old, right? I could have talked about this last week, but I had plenty else on the docket to go over. And so I kind of push it off as the news slows down a little bit here with the player movement. Got a few things happening and a few scheduling things and a few other things going on rules wise, all of that, scheduling and everything else. As that stuff kind of slows down, then we'll need a little bit more to talk about, right? The first episode for sure, and largely the second episode, there was plenty of player movement to talk about. Okay. Now I could talk about, seeing Jason in here reminds me, do we want to spend a lot of time really talking about guys leaving? Like UNLV had a couple guys commit elsewhere this week, right? Like Benarby goes to Providence. Kind of surprising. Didn't really expect that. Don't know that he'll play a ton. Maybe, who knows? We'll see. They certainly have upgraded their roster with their new coach there. But, do we want to spend a lot of time on that? Not really. Like, who's the other guy? I'm blanking. Oh, Naz Cunningham went somewhere in the Southland of the SWAC. Wasn't a very high-profile school. And so, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. And the players that have come into the conference or the two conferences this week, I have some notes on, so we'll talk about that. But I want to make sure we have enough things to talk about. I teased a few weeks ago talking about coaches, maybe some that are inching towards the hot seat. And I haven't even got to that yet because we've had other stuff to talk about, and I didn't want to fire every bullet off. So we're still holding that back in the holster. Probably get to that next week. I have some other things already for next week. So this is great. Like, look, I was worried. I really shouldn't have been worried because I know that you guys that have watched me or listened to me for a couple years now know that I can talk and talk and talk. So I shouldn't have been worried that I would have enough to fill a show, but you just never know. And now, the plan was to try to get it to be an hour. If it's a little short, it's not a big deal. And right, the first 3 episodes have gone like hour 20, hour 20, hour 20. So certainly hasn't been a problem. I worry once we get into the dog days of summer here that we'll be a little bit bare in terms of stuff. So that's why I'm saving stuff. But also, as BJ and I have talked about, maybe it'll be time to get a guest or two in here, a coach, maybe a media personality, especially with some of the rosters nearly being finalized. Might be time to get a coach in here to talk about what they've accomplished, how they feel about their roster, stuff like that. I would say, so the portal is closed, right? Like it's closed as far as you can no longer enter, but there's hundreds and probably even thousands. I haven't even looked lately. Thousands of players, not thousands, but I'm sure 1,000 plus non-committed players, right? Now, are they all like meaningful rotation guys, especially for schools that we're talking about in here? Well, of course they're not. But as I discussed 2 weeks ago with that bottomless pit of players over in Europe, it's like going to Red Robin and getting the bottomless fries. I don't know. Do you guys have Red Robin out there? What do you have out west or in the mountain time zone that has like bottomless fries or some type of free refills on your appetizers, right? You just endless supply of players in Europe that you can go get. So like, and those a lot of those players that you're going to get are going to be better than the guys still left in the portal. I'm sure there's still some difference makers in the portal. There's no doubt about it. But largely, that stuff has been scarfed up because they're the ones getting the money thrown at them by the Power 4 schools, et cetera. Okay? And so the large bulk at this point of guys that are going to be difference makers this coming season are going to come from your European leagues, by and large. Okay? But aside from the European contingent, because, again, there's no way to tell how many there are. It's endless. That's kind of where I started with that. I would say like 75 to 80% of roster movement is done. I would say, okay? It's never fully done because who knows what's going to happen like later on. But largely it's done. Yeah, I've seen a couple of schools that are just like Nevada, Colorado State. I think they're largely done, right? we know some others. And Boise's just about done now after this week. San Diego State, probably not. Mexico, close to being done. GCU's close to being done, if not done. Maybe one more spot. Utah State might have another spot or two. The Zags might have another spot or two. And so, but it's just about finished. All right. And so that talking point will slow down a bit. So maybe we'll get some coaches on here to talk about how they feel about their roster construction to this point. Yeah, I mean, look, they're all going to say they love it, right? Nobody's going to say anything to the contrary, but we'll try to get into the weeds a little bit about who they grab and what they like about said player. Okay. All right. Now, as you can see on the rundown there, the next thing we're going to work on is a neat little graphic here. Well, I don't know about if it's a neat little graphic, but what's up, Devo, is that that will show us moving from piece to piece on the rundown. Okay. So highlighting like Bart Torvik right now, and then moving it down to the Utah State BYU scheduling alliance and so forth. Right. But one piece at a time, like I said, one piece at a time. Experimental stuff here, trial stuff. This is like a conference tournament, and we're trying out some new rules, right? That's right, Journeyman. No longer mom and apple pie. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'll get to the 76 teams in a minute, Devo. So the Pac Mountain West schools will be seeded as the crap 11, 12 seedings in the new first round, protecting the Power 4 spots for the Fat Cats, 100%. And I talked about this last week as to why I wasn't fond of it, even though, I mean, it's going to I'll get to that in a second. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about old Bart Torvik here first. Now, take this with the grain of salt that it is still early May, and I think when this projection came out, it was like May 1st or 2nd. So it was literally just the start of May. Not even a month since the end of the season. Plenty of movement still to happen. Who knows in terms of like coaching movement? I know that the coaching carousel has stopped, but I would, without having looked at it, I'm going to guess that more than 50% of the last decade, right, there's been like a shock/surprise coaching change in the dead months of June, July, August, September, even October, right? Going all the way back to like Bo Ryan, the Bo Ryan kind of guys that leave too late for their school to hire somebody, so they have to give it to the assistant, right? Bo Ryan did it at Wisconsin out of nowhere. Bruce Pearl did it 8 months ago so his son could get it, right? And then you have the guys who just kind of retire, Tony Bennett style, Jay Wright, you know, and then you have the possibility of an NBA job, right? Like the Magic job is open, I think, right? The Magic job is open. Now, I know that Billy Donovan is heavily favored to get that job, but who knows how that stuff goes. And it's possible, right? I'm not saying haven't followed it that much because I don't really care about the NBA or Michigan at this point for that matter. But, you know, I've heard Dusty May's name linked to that, right? And so it's possible, like if Donovan doesn't work out and, you know, Dusty May, coach at FAU, you know, regional ties, obviously had success here in college level. So why not, right? If you're Orlando, I don't know. And so that would trigger a whole nother set of carousel spinning around. Like what's to say that somebody else doesn't retire, right? Like Bill Self has said he's going to stick around probably for another year or two, but you know, Izzo or a Kelvin Sampson or some of the guys longer in the tooth there, like you don't think they're going to, but would it be shocking? No. Like just the other day, I guess Steve Kerr, it was probably not likely that Kerr was going to return to Golden State, and Todd Golden from the Florida was the heavy favorite to land that job. Well, I guess Kerr just re-signed with the Warriors, but that was that close to Golden getting out and going back where he had ties in that Bay Area, and then opening up the carousel again. So certainly the coaching stuff is not dead yet. All right. And so that could change things. Roster movement could change things yet. And then there's the ever present factor of chemistry with these guys, because You can see all you want and follow the rankings and the portal gets and how the guys are ranked, 3-star, 4, whatever. You have no idea how they're going to mesh and gel until you see them on the floor. And that's not going to come for months. Okay. But what we have, old Bart gave us some numbers here, right? So I'm going to just read them, got them written down. I have the Pac, the Mountain West and the West Coast Conference. So in the Pac, they have the Zags came in 8th. This was after their acquisition of Jop a week ago. So Gonzaga 8, and then a massive gap. Okay. San Diego State 61, CSU 75, Utah State 79, Oregon State 92, Boise 104, Wazoo 134, Texas State 137, and Fresno 151. Okay. I guess I'll run through all 3 conferences, and then I will break them down. In the Mountain West, GCU 57, New Mexico 65, Nevada 83, Wyoming 110, UNLV 118, Hawaii 120, UTEP 175, San Jose State 179, UC Davis 205, Air Force 222. And in the West Coast, St. Mary's 64, Santa Clara 103, Loyola 115, San Diego 125, Pacific 140, Pepperdine 147, Portland 152, Seattle 184, San Francisco 207, and Denver 221. Just quickly on the West Coast, because I haven't spent a lot of time talking about them, and that's not going to be a big part of this show as we've kind of discussed, but I'll mention it. Like that we know that conference is in a bad way. I mean, it just took a bunch of hits. It started with Grand Canyon following or ditching them and coming over to the Mountain West. Gonzaga obviously bails. Randy Bennett hits the road. And so San Francisco, which was an NCAA tournament team with Todd Golden a few years ago, is now 207 in Torvik's early rankings here. Like, talk about a bad drop. Seattle was good this year. They're down, or decent this year. They're already all the way down at 184. So just pretty bleak in the West Coast. That for sure looks like a one-bid league moving forward, unless something massive changes. I just don't see it. I know they're reinforcing with a couple of the Cal State branches, but I just don't see much. There are too many quad 3s and 4s once you get into conference play. So just not super. Again, these things are changing, I'm sure, by the day. So these are a week old. I'm sure some of them have shifted, but all right. Now, the issue here, and I saw Steve Ivey retweet when this set of numbers came out. We all know, even though regardless of the fact that the conferences are split into 2 by now, these teams are perennially underrated and most of the time overperform. Okay. Now, did it happen this year for Boise as an example? No. But by and large, Leon has outperformed his preseason metric, right? Same thing with Utah State. Doesn't matter who the coach is. They outperform, right? But that's a pretty big gap there once you get out of the Zags with at 8 to 61 at San Diego State. Now, the fact is they haven't performed well the last 2 years, right? A last 4 team in 2 years ago, and they missed the tournament entirely, a first 4 out team this year. But, and they do lose on paper a lot of their talented guys. Okay. Now, I think I and most viewers in here right now would expect them to be better in terms of being more cohesive this year than they were last year, right? You can have all the stars you want. If it doesn't mesh together, it's going to give you headaches and migraines as a coach and gray hairs, right? So you'll take the guys that'll play together over the guys that have the 4 and 5 stars next to their name. And that I think you'll see that in San Diego State from last year to this year, right? So I think 61 is low for them. CSU at 75 seems about right. Utah State has probably earned, well, not probably, they have earned the benefit of the doubt to be higher than 79. But, look, it is what it is. We know how these system of these websites and these projections are. They favor the power schools. They just do, right? They favor the power schools. And so they're not going to give the benefit of the doubt to Utah State or San Diego State, even if they've earned it, right? Even if they've earned it. Okay. So I think they're low at 79. We'll see. Oregon State at 92, quite a bump from where they've been. Now, we've talked a couple times on here about their roster that they've built. and they're trending up. There's no doubt about it. Now, I said, with Joyner, that he hasn't coached a game yet. So that's my only, let's hit the pause button there. But certainly you'll take that, because the last couple of years they have not been near sub 100, okay, like they are now. Boise at 104. Again, I haven't checked this recently. I'm going to guess that Boise's higher than 104 now. They've added a couple players since this list was put out. And again, Leon has outperformed more often than not. Okay. Another case of this past season, they didn't quite add up to the sum of their parts. They didn't. Okay. I'm not going to assign blame to anybody there, whether it was an individuals, something with the staff. I don't know. You may not see the roster as talented this year. You may. They've added some nice pieces here. You may not see the roster as talented, but sometimes it's easier to coach those guys, and I don't want to, when I was coaching in high school, right? Some people may not like this, but I had good buddies when I was coaching that would coach the girls team, right? And one of them was a guy who I used to coach with at the boys level. And he would say, Tommy, coaching girls is better or easier, however he would phrase it. And I'd say, come on, Jimmy, what are you talking about? And he said, listen, they are not as talented or as athletic. Maybe not talented. They are not as athletic, but they will listen to you and do what you ask of them. Okay. Now, sure, the higher you get up, the more difficult that's going to be. You're coaching at UConn, South Carolina, WNBA. I'm sure there's a little bit of diva-ness there. Okay. But point being, the guys, it doesn't know, it's harder to coach them because they have egos, especially when you get to this level here, right? And that's what makes it difficult to get everybody on the same page. Nevada 2 years ago, San Diego State this past year, plenty of other teams across the country that underachieve with the stars out the rear end, okay? Because it's about how to, are they listening to you? And so Leon has earned that trust, okay? And it just didn't work this past season, right? Texas State at 137, I don't buy that. They were not anywhere, I don't think, near the 137 this year. I don't get that. But I haven't paid a lot of attention to them, I'll be honest with you, I haven't. But I'd be surprised if they're 137. But we'll see. That'll be good for the Pac if they are. If your lowest team is 151 at Fresno, that's great. And I would say this too, Wahlberg's got no players right now. So when he starts adding to his roster, that number will go up. So if you have no teams below 137, which is what Texas State is right now, well, Fresno's 151, but again, with them moving up when they add pieces, all right, that's pretty good. You'll take that. In the Mountain West, GCU and New Mexico are probably appropriately placed, 57, 65. Said that last week about GCU, that Evan Mia had them in that mid to high 50s range for a roster. And I think that's accurate. New Mexico 65, Nevada 83. I think Pac fans would probably think they'd be a little bit higher. And, they may get there. Wyoming 110. Now UNLV at 118 and Hawaii at 120. If UNLV and Hawaii are only 2 spots apart, that is not good at all for UNLV, because Hawaii lost everybody, all right? And it should be a lot easier for Pastner to replenish his roster than it is for Iran Gano at Hawaii, all right? Now, again, he's got more guys to get. Pastner grabbed the guy last week that I missed on Sunday. I didn't talk about him. I'll get to him in a minute. UTEP 179, San Jose 175, San Jose 179, UC Davis 205, Air Force 222. Air Force there, as that one's more egregious than Texas State. Okay, how do you have Air Force metric at 222? They were one of the worst teams in the country this year, probably finishing in the 340s. Okay, of any, whether it's Ken Palm, Evan Mia, Bart Torvik, whoever, right? The Tom Moser metrics, they were one of the worst teams in the country. They have a new coach who, despite the fact that I know the guy and I like the guy, he played at Penn State. I watched him play in person. I recruited with the guy. I've sat with him at events and watched him recruit and talk to him. Okay, I like the guy. He is like 1 or 2 years of Division I experience as an assistant. Okay, and no offense, because again, like I like the guy, right, Crispin, but the job wasn't exactly in high demand. So it's not like they hired Tim Miles, right? And he's gonna like have him, and maybe Crispin, maybe Joe Crispin will be great. Okay, it's possible. All right, I hope he is. In fact, nobody wants to have one of your games every night in the league be a 25-point snoozer, and you know it before the game starts. Nobody wants that. So I hope he can do it. But I see no world in which Air Force is 222, and you guys can call me out on that in 10 months if I'm wrong, okay? But anyway, so just some thoughts on that. Does not leave a lot of wiggle room for at-large bids. But again, the expectation is that the schools in the non-Big Ten, Big East, and I don't even know about Big East, but Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and Big 12, any school not in those conferences does not really get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to these preseason metric systems. They just don't, okay? Unless you're Gonzaga, right? That's a different animal, all right? So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Nick needs a coaching council, other stuff. Yeah, as a Lobo fan, you don't want it to go at all because you do not want the potential for Olin to get picked off. Perry, I agree with you. I had this conversation too, and I'll talk about this when the bracket comes up. The tournament doesn't start until it's down to 64 teams. UNM will be a team who loses out if the carousel gets going again. Andrews was quiet most of the year in Buchanan. Yeah, I mean, Andrews had one really good week where he looked incredible, and then after that, it didn't click before that, and it didn't click after that. As unfortunately, Buchanan had some injuries. He was solid. He was good. He wasn't great, and he wasn't what Boise needed him to be if they were going to replace Dagenhart and make a run at an at-large bid. That's all there is to it. Kentucky might hold the record for ego flops. Obviously, I mean, that's what happens when you refuse to recruit anybody who's not like a 5-star. I mean, it's just not going to work all the time. Sometimes it's going to work, but it's not going to work all the time. Okay, let's get to Utah State and BYU with their scheduling. No, not the camera thing. That had not done that for 2 weeks. Okay, so the 2-gamer this year in Provo, true road game for Utah State, true home game for BYU. So that will be a quad 1 game, barring some type of catastrophe, right? Like BYU, yeah, they lose to Bansa, but they spend, and so that'll be a quad 1 game. Okay, on the road, all they need to be is top 75 or whatever. That'll be a quad 1 game. Okay. Maybe it's top 60. I'm out of the loop with my numbers here. But quad 1, great, awesome. Awesome. Next year, neutral in Salt Lake City. Okay. So like I see that as a fan. Now, not a diehard Aggie fan like some might be in here, and like plenty are, right? The herd, the spectrum, Aggie Nation. Okay. I'm not diehard Aggie. I'm an Aggie fan because I root for our teams. Okay. I see that. And my initial reaction is that's freaking great. Okay. Because I've just been on here the last 2 weeks now talking about how we got to start scheduling better. Right now, I'll get to Gonzaga in a minute. That's why Gonzaga's on a rundown. It's about their non-conference schedule. Okay. Now they're a different animal, but we got to schedule tougher. Okay. And so I see this and I'm like, this is freaking great, right? You get a true road game this year. Next year might be quad 1, but at the worst, it's quad 2. And it's all in likelihood to be a quad 1. All right. As long as the coach stays and they continue to have money, I don't see why that would change. Like they're invested in being good now. Okay. It didn't work this year. They lost in the first round, but they're on TV all the time. They schedule tough in a non-con. They're in one of the best conferences in the country in the Big 12. Like, they're not going anywhere, I don't think, right? So that's likely to be back-to-back quad one games for Utah State. Okay, awesome. And it's like, if you win, like, jackpot. I mean, you're going to go into the game this year as an underdog. Okay, who knows what type of point spread we're looking at, because I don't really know much about BYU at this point. I know they brought a couple guys back. I'm sure they brought a couple transfers in. It's a true road game. You've lost, what was the number? You've lost 10 in a row to BYU. Or wait, is that how it was? I don't remember. Someone got to correct me on that if I'm wrong. Okay. You haven't played in a while. Rivalry game. I'm sure they'll be up for it. So it's not like you're going to catch BYU sleeping, but it's like a no-lose situation. It's like a freebie. You go out there and you play, and if you pull the upset, it's a freaking quad one that will carry for 4 months from November to Selection Sunday. If you lose, great. It's a quad one loss. It goes on your resume. It's good. Of course you'd rather win, but it's a quad one loss. It's a hell of a lot better than playing, no offense to them, but like Weber State or somebody else at home that's going to be a quad four win. Okay? Because with the extra non-con games this year, you can still do that, right? You have 2 extra games in both conferences, I believe, right? Maybe even actually 4 more for Utah State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Boise, and Fresno. 4 more games than last year. You had 20 league last year. This year it's 16. Plus, I think they added a 30-second game. I don't know if they added it specifically for that Players Era championship game or not, but they added a 30-second game. So I think you have 5 more non-conference games that you need to schedule if you're those 5 teams. I don't know about Gonzaga. I don't know how many games they played last year in the West Coast Conference. So it'll be 3 more for the Mountain West schools, who are going to go from 20 to 18 and add 1 on the top to get to 32. So that's 3 more. So you have opportunities. So if you want to keep your home game against Weber State or whoever it is, great. Schedule one in on top of it. I know you want the home games, and that's where the pushback came. I know you want the home games. You want BYU to come to your place, okay? But here's the thing, and I'm not a business person, right? But I like to think, internally that I'm a little bit of like a negotiator, right? And unfortunately, as good as you are, as your program is, like you don't hold the cards in this arrangement. Like BYU holds the cards. They're the Power 4 school. Like, you kind of need them more than they need you. Now, I would argue since COVID, your program has been better, okay? But that doesn't really account for much these days. They are in the Big 12. You need them more than they need you. All right. And that's not a shot at Utah State. It's just the landscape today in college hoops. Schedule the game. That's great. And I get it as an Aggie fan. It's bummer. I didn't really kind of read all the details, but I saw from a couple media people in and around Logan, Jason, Patrick, looking at the details of the contract that weren't super, the AD catching a little heat just from social media stuff, maybe more there, but I didn't really see any of that. But because it wasn't a great deal, you know what? Like, I get it. It's not ideal, but you what do you want to do? Do you want to hold out? You want to cut off your nose to spite your face? Like, you got the game scheduled. Go win the game. Go win the game. Shove it up their arse and win the game. Right? And then you can whatever. All right? So I understand. It's like a bummer. Okay? You don't get to play them at home. And maybe that was part of it too, like the neutral game then in Salt Lake City, maybe the seating or the ticket revenue or something wasn't going your way. I get all that. Like, you start looking at all those details from a backer of the program, like in all different ways. I get it. Right? It's not ideal. But again, you got to accept the fact that our schools don't hold the cards. You hold the cards over Utah Valley and Weber State and whoever Utah Tech, whoever the hell else there is. New Mexico holds the cards over New Mexico State, right? Like CSU holds the cards over Northern Colorado. Like, you get what I'm saying here, right? It doesn't matter that you've had arguably a better program than BYU in the last decade-ish or whatever it might be. I'd have to really look it up, okay? But like, that's just, it doesn't matter, okay? You need those games. So, maybe that's easier for me to say as a fan of all instead of just a fan of Utah State, right? But I would say the same thing no matter what it was. If Colorado would do, if CSU would do the same thing with Colorado, and Colorado would say, you know what, we're not coming to you anymore. We're going to do a 1-1, one home, one neutral. I would say the same thing. Okay. It stinks. CSU's been a better program the last handful of years in Colorado, but now maybe that one's not quite as equal because Colorado's not a guaranteed quad one the way that BYU is. So it's like the law of diminishing returns. Or at some point, it's not worth it. But for BYU here, I think it's worth it. Okay. And Utah State has now games at the Pit against New Mexico, likely to be quad one. Not as much of a lock of a quad one as the BYU one is, but certainly could be, and probably won't be anywhere worse than a quad two. And at Memphis. Now, Memphis was terrible this year, but that one's probably, I don't know that they'll get to quad one, but it could. And it probably at worst will be a quad two. And then we saw this week that they're in the Acrisure with a ton of teams. And so, but I saw a little bit of contradictory stuff on that. So I'm going to save that for next week. We'll save the Acrisure talk for next week. Okay. Because I want to get to a few of these other things here. And I do want to, Nicholas, I just said that Acrisure has a bunch of teams out west for sure. You had a thing here. All these teams getting in the Acrisure, getting Power 4 games or quality games. Crickets out of UNM. Feel like the longer the silence, the worse we will schedule. Yeah, I don't know what you're going to do for the MTE, Nick, because I'm pretty sure that Patino's the one that got you in last year in Kansas City there when you got your games against Nebraska and Mississippi State. I don't know either. We all know the drill, right? Like you need the home games for the revenue. But as I said before, you're getting 3 extra games this year. Although, look, when I went on that tangent 2 weeks ago, I heard from a few Lobo fans who said, look, we tried to schedule everybody, Olin did, and nobody would bite. So, there's 100 of them. I guess there's 80, however many there are. I find it hard to believe you can't find 1 or 2 that will play you, that will host you, right? Because they're not all in these top flight MTEs. They're not, okay? You take what you can get. But yeah, it does suck if you can't get anything. When you have Utah State, and even though it's at home, you're hoping that the Aggies play up and it gets to be a quad one. But you certainly need something more than that, right? Because I'm assuming that the VCU home and home is done, so that's off the schedule. And I don't know what you're doing as far as your MTE. So I'll have to check in with Graham or somebody and see what's going on there. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so next on the rundown is 76 teams. So what does that mean? Well, obviously, I talked last week about the tournament, the NCAA tournament expanding their field. A lot of debate on that. Many not really in favor of it. Some in favor of it. BJ, I talked to BJ. BJ's in favor of it. Others are. Now, here's the thing. Here's what I will say. And somebody, there was a comment on it earlier. I put it up. What was it? So Perry said the tournament doesn't really start until it's down to 64 teams. So here's what I would say. It was Devo who said about the seeding, right? And we talked about that a little bit last week. So look, I'll watch the games, right? The same as I would watch, I watch plenty of other games. Let me get that off the screen. Yeah, right? So I'll watch the games. But yeah, as Perry said, I don't, and a few fans said it last week too. You don't really, it's not really, to me, it's not part of the tournament, right? It's basically an extension of championship week, even though you're not playing conference foes, because I think a lot of people associate the start of the tournament with noon on Thursday, or I guess 10 o'clock if you're in the Mountain Time Zone. That's when the tournament starts. And so they revealed the bracket this week of 76 teams. And so, as I said, not a huge deal, although for some of us it is, because, that's how people get into the tournament as a youngster, filling out these brackets and watching all these games. And you're like, what do you mean, these games are on during the day and I can stay home from school? And what do you mean I get to fill out this bracket and try and win, even though I don't know how to pronounce half of these teams and I don't know where they are geographically, right? Like as an 8, 9, 10-year-old filling these things out, it's like Christmas in March. And so now, like it detracts from a little bit, because you almost need like not finance, but some type of degree to figure it out. And as Devo said, I think it was Devo or somebody, as I just showed a minute ago, the seeding now is not going to work out for our teams, most of them anyway, right? Because they're going to protect the Power 4 schools. So I guess if you win, it gets you an extra unit, right? As we discussed last week. So in that sense, it's good. But as I said, Chris Murray reported on last week, it's going to make it that much harder for teams to make deep runs, because you're going to have to go through 3 games in 5 days in that first week. Then, like, how many of our teams are going to get in and clear that? So what is there? 52 teams, right? And then the bottom 24 get you to 76. So 52 teams are going to be clear. And it's not even the top 52, because, they're taking the 11s and 12s. So, I mean, maybe the top, 30, 32, if you go through seed line 8, 36, if you go through seed line 9. How many of our teams are going to be in the top 36 from these two conferences, right? Like Gonzaga for sure. In past years, San Diego State, but not a ton. New Mexico was a 10 seed, right? A couple years ago. Utah State would have snuck by in that 8-9 game a couple times now with Sprinkle, and then this year with Calhoun. So I guess they would have been okay. But man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Devo says the committee's going to match mid-majors against one another in the new first round. I mean, could happen. Not super. Like, everybody hates that. Not everybody, but fans of our schools and our conferences and other mid-majors, we all hate that, right? We hate that. So I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see Utah State playing Memphis, or Boise playing Memphis like they did a few years ago. Nobody wants to see that. Okay. Let them have their shot at the, 14 and, well, it wouldn't be that much. It'll be 12 and 10 team in X conference or whatever it is, right? Like, we don't want to see 2 mid-majors going at it. And so, I mean, that's all stuff we can get into later. Will it get us an extra bid? I said last week, I think it'll get us 1 extra bid. I'd be stunned if it gets us more than 1. I just don't see 2 of the 8 going to mid-majors. I just don't. So I think it'll get us 1 more bid. Okay. So I don't know. Right. Nick says, what are your predictions for the Pac and the Mountain West getting bids this next year? I mean, I think most people, you're going to hear, Nick, that from other media groupings and talking heads, once it gets to September and October, they're all going to forecast the Mountain West as a 1-bid league. And I think a month ago, I would have said it was almost certain to be a 1-bid league. I think it has the potential now to be a 2-bid league. But the thing is going to be this. Like, how does that work? That works by Grand Canyon, because they probably will have the toughest non-conference schedule, clearing the field, and then somebody else winning the conference tournament, New Mexico or Nevada. I just don't think the schedules of the rest of the teams combined with their talent level will get them into the top 40 or whatever of Ken Pom and in the net and all of that stuff. I don't see that happening. Okay. I like to think I'm wrong. Nick, you said a minute ago, talking about the schedule or lack thereof, Alford is in a decent MTE this year, and apparently he's in a second one, although haven't really heard a lot about that lately. But he hasn't really aced the non-conference scheduling in the last few years, even when he's had good teams. And anybody beyond that, even though I anticipate UNLV getting above where they are now in that early Torvik ranking, Wyoming, they just don't schedule good enough. And there's anchors down there at the bottom. Look at the bottom 4 teams: UTEP, San Jose State, UC Davis, Air Force. So it's going to be, I think we can get 2 out of the Mountain West, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. If you look at the pack, I think 3 is a safe number. They have the potential to get 4. 100% they do, okay? If you look at Gonzaga, San Diego State, and Utah State, I think most people would say, well, those are the 3 that will get in. But San Diego State didn't get in this past year, right? And they would have, I guess, under the current format. So there's that. Boise would have gotten in 2 years ago under the now current format. So 4 is a possibility. It is. But it's early. We'll see. That's early. So I would say the over-under for the pack is 3.5. I think that's a pretty good number. You could go either way with that, even money on the juice there, 3.5 over or under. Okay, Colorado State, Boise, Oregon State as options for your 4th team. Okay, maybe slightly juice to the under there, favoring under 3.5. The Mountain West, I would put it 1.5, heavily, shaded to the under right there. Because 1, obviously you're going to get 1, and 2 would be a longer shot. Okay. So subject to change, we'll see. So Drew says that Wyoming got a 6'11" player from Germany, one of the best in Europe. I will have to check him out. Drew. Thank you for that. And Pizza Man, welcome in, my friend. 76-team tourney would have more appeal if they added a week to the tournament, let the playing games on Saturday, Sunday. That would be interesting. CBS would never do that because it would screw up their scheduling with the Masters. Like they would never say that, but like that contract with CBS and the Masters, they might value that. Well, they probably don't, but not from a financial perspective. They don't value that more than March Madness, but from a historical and nostalgic perspective, they value that almost as much, if not more, than March Madness, and they would never move it off of that weekend. And there's just not enough room in there to do it. So I just don't think they could do that. I don't mind what you're saying. Maybe there's some, I don't know how they would do that. Okay. Last thing on the rundown is Gonzaga, because I still have other notes here I want to get to, and I did want to keep this to barely more than an hour. I say that all the time, but let's, with Gonzaga, I just wanted to talk about the non-conference schedule that Fuse put together. Because a couple weeks ago, I said, I think he'll scale it back. And then last week, it became apparent that he wasn't going to scale it back. And then this week, it got even nuttier. So let me read to you the schedule that Fuse has put together to go along with his much improved conference schedule from a year ago, or from the last 10 years, where they played St. Mary's twice. San Francisco had their turn of being good. Santa Clara, it was this year for sure. But then plenty of anchors in that conference. You want to talk about anchors. But now this year, he, just crazy. We already talked about the early Torvik rankings of the PAC schools. So on top of that, he's got a season opener against Purdue in Vegas. Now, is this the Purdue of the last 3 years? It doesn't seem to be. Obviously, Braden Smith, the guards are gone that they had. The veteran group is gone. But it's still Purdue with Matt Painter, one of the best programs in the Big Ten. Guy knows how to coach, knows how to recruit. Neutral site in Vegas, opening night. So that's a quad 1, 99% quad 1. They scheduled Duke in Detroit, completely neutral. Very odd site, to be honest, for that. I'd have to look. It's possible that Detroit has NCAA tournament games next year, and maybe that's why those two coaches decided to go there, unless they have a recruit from there or something. Just seemed like an odd site for Duke and Gonzaga to play in Detroit. I think that's one of those Amazon games that Duke got, a 3-game Amazon deal. But anyways, obviously that's quad 1A. Okay, Purdue probably is too, but Duke. Michigan State, They're playing in California. So that's 3 quad ones. So here I have 2 stars because they're either playing UCLA or Oregon. They're both on a schedule for the next 2 years, one each year, I believe. They're going to play them once each. And I don't think they're going to play them both this year. I think it looks like they're going to play Oregon next year, and they'll play UCLA this year on a neutral. So that gives you Purdue neutral, Duke neutral, Michigan State neutral, UCLA neutral. Then they have a road game at Creighton. Now, Creighton was down this year in McDermott's last year, but at worst, that's a quad 2. Okay, they got Alan Huss in. They've brought some decent players in. We'll see how they do, but it's likely quad 1, but also I'd say 50-50 toss-up between quad 1, quad 2. And Kentucky on the road. So as much as people want to, put Mark Pope on blast, and certainly, he hasn't lived up to their expectations there in Big Blue Nation, it's still a quad 1 game on the road in Rupp Arena, okay? And if that's not enough, then they have the Players Era for 3 games. So I know the Players Era brackets, if you will, came out this week, and that's one of the things I'm going to save for next week. I said I'm going to talk about the Acrisure next week. I'm going to save the Players Era for next week too. So they had a 16-teamer. Gonzaga's in that, and San Diego State's in that, and they have an 8-teamer, and UNLV is in that. So that'll be 3 good games for UNLV, 3 good games for San Diego State. I guess the potential exists for maybe UNLV to have a third that's not super, because I think Rutgers and Notre Dame are in there. And I'm not sure what to expect out of those 2 teams. Although, to be fair, look, they're probably saying the same thing about UNLV, right? Because on paper, it's probably between Rutgers and UNLV, who the worst team is in the field. But again, that's not a shot at UNLV. You're looking at teams that are second weekend mainstays in the NCAA tournament here. I'm not going to go through the whole list tonight, but I mean, we know who the heavy hitters are that play in this thing. So it's no shade on UNLV to say you're not one of the better teams. You're going to get good games against good teams. They didn't show well in it this year. They were banged up. Passer didn't have the right rotation. Hopefully they will show better. Same thing for San Diego State too, really. I mean, they got a win over a bad Oregon team, Altman's worst team in years. Didn't beat a bad Baylor team that didn't make the NCAA tournament and then got taken to the shed. No shame in that by Michigan, because Gonzaga did too. But, hopefully, we can show better in that. And I'm going to break that down a little bit more next week. Okay, so there goes your rundown. I do want to point a few extra things out here, all right? As we're nearing the hour mark, I appreciate all of you guys being here. Appreciate all of your comments. As we just go from topic to topic. Okay, so I said, for next week, Acrisure, Players Era. Also, there was something this week, just little, because it wasn't finalized yet. The rules committee or some committee met to talk about rules. And so I want to go over that a little bit. Nothing's really been changed. And I think they do it every other year where they change rules, but there were some interesting things in there. And so we'll talk about that next week as well. Acrisure, Players Era, and rules. Okay, some players that I want to hit on that I had not mentioned yet that have just come into our schools within the last weekish. Maybe some of these are a little bit dated and I just didn't touch on them because a couple schools have been silent, and I haven't mentioned them a lot in terms of player and roster construction, right? And that's one of them is Utah State. So Solomon Callahan is a Wright State transfer. I watched some clips on him, a lefty, pretty athletic wing, shoots it pretty efficiently. Now, obviously a step up in competition here, coming from Wright State in the Horizon. That's where Calhoun came from at Youngstown State, not one of the top 10 mid-major leagues. And so we'll see how it translates. But he does seem to be an athletic wing and, a plus defender. So that's good. And let's face it, as I said, it's been quiet on the Aggie roster front. So anything like this is a good thing, right? I guess they got a couple guys from Snow Junior College, and one of them's banged up, a 7-footer, so he's not going to play. Another one was Drake Allen's brother. I believe his name is Jax Allen. So, can lightning strike twice for the Aggies with the Allen family? I don't know. It's kind of like New Mexico with Jake Hall's brother. I think if you get anything out of him, it's a bonus. Same thing with Jax Allen here. Like I mean, if you get anything close to what you got out of Drake Allen, out of his brother here, you'll take it, right? You'll take it because I don't think it's somebody that they were like counting on. And so we'll see. We'll see. Few more here. San Diego State, David Torresani, a point guard. I kind of have in quotation marks there. He's from Italy. Nice, looks like a nice player. I don't know. He's not physically imposing. Looks pretty quick and athletic. Needs to put on a little bit of muscle, and I'm sure that will happen here in the weight room on the Mesa. Now, I said point guard in quotation marks because, like, that was one of the few bright spots this year for Dutcher and Aztec Nation, and that was LZ Harrington, and he returns. So what are you going to do here with Torresani? Do you risk moving Harrington off the ball? He looked awfully comfortable playing the point. So now you have a stockpile of guards. Don't forget Latrell Davis, Nick Anderson, the transfer. There's a couple others, who now, what are we going to do with all these guys? They seem to be a little bit thinner in the front court and really adding up in the guards. Now we know that the portal and the salaries of big guys are not conducive to our schools having a depth in the front court, right? It's like it just blows your salary. It blows your money out. And so unless you're finding the Bouillons and the 6'11 guys from Europe, the muscular guys to bang, maybe Dutcher's going to go small. It's just, not really what he usually likes to do. So we'll see. I mean, obviously the guy can play, Torresani. He's got professional experience, and I think he'll be a player. Can he play at the same time with Harrington? And if Davis is out there, because remember the talk that Davis was one of their – Pete. Okay, Pizza. That makes sense. It's not David. Silly me. It's pronounced David. Obviously, he's Italian. Although, isn't there one of the thank you for that, Pizza. I should have thought about that. He is Italian, David. But isn't that sculpture that Michelangelo or one of those guys painted the David? Shouldn't that be the David? I should have known that, David. So David Torresani, not David. I probably won't be the only person to do that, but should have known better. David Torresani. So I won't do that again. But I'm curious what's going to happen there. Do they go small with Davis at the 3? Because he was, in theory, one of their better players this year. We heard a lot, and he was redshirting. So, you got to have him out there. And then, Anderson's one of your big transfers that you brought in, and Skorich. These guys aren't like typical front court San Diego State guys. So who's getting the minutes? Who's not getting the minutes in the back court here? Interesting to see. I mean, again, it could be a good problem, but I'll remind you that 9, 10, 8, 7 months ago, this was the deepest team that the Aztecs ever had. Their second team could have beaten half the teams in the Mountain West. And it ended up being a not a good problem to have. Like I just said, it's a good problem. It wasn't a good problem this past year for San Diego State. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Okay. Another team that I have not talked a lot about at all on here because they've been super quiet has been CSU, has been the Rams. Now, part of that is kind of like Wyoming. They brought back a fair amount of their own production. So good for them. That automatically should bump you up a peg because these guys can play. All these guys that we mentioned here, Torresani, Solomon Callahan, some of the other guys from other weeks that I have talked about, I don't even know who they are anymore. Like a Tyler Harris for UNLV, like Jop, we'll put Jop to the side. Peter Bondel going to Nevada, Butka from Lithuania going to Boise. Like, we think these guys can play. We don't know. We don't know for sure, right? And that's part of what I talked about a few weeks ago with, going over the list of names of guys who in the last 2 years were like good gets, and then they didn't do jack crap. They didn't do a damn thing because we don't know. But we know about a lot of these guys for Wyoming and CSU. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We know what you're getting out of Jace Butler. You know what you're getting out of Pasquarelli and Booth and some of the other guys, right? Bemba, Jorgensen. MacGyver's the one I kind of worry about. And, I think that there were Ram fans that were hoping that Kai and Evans would come back after kind of, how do I put it? Not exactly having the year he hoped or thought he would have at North Carolina. And I'm pretty sure he linked back up with Nico in Minnesota. So unfortunately, the Rams did not get him. They're going to have to just hope that MacGyver improves, or maybe they got another ace up the sleeve, because as I talked about last week, like Jevin's not coming back to run the show because the 5-5 is not going to work for seniors from this past year. So that's the one area of concern right now for me with CSU. But they got and I don't know that this is probably not a guy for this season, but I know they're excited about the 6'10" big. They got Jackson Clark. He prepped in Iowa, and he seems like a pretty nice player, put up good stats in high school, good size already on his frame at 6'10" as a youngster. But again, are we going to expect an 18 or 19-year-old to come in and contribute in the post in this conference as a true freshman? I would not expect it to. Hopefully he's a guy that maybe can get minutes, because, again, Joppa bailed out. They have Jorgensen and Bemba. With no Joppa, we'll see. Maybe there's a chance for a few minutes if he can pick up the what Nico's trying to get across to him on both ends of the floor, offense and defense. We'll see. And then maybe it's a guy that in 2 years he can really contribute when Jorgensen and Bemba are no longer there. All right. But, good get. And as I said, they've been quiet, but maybe they feel that they're happy with what they got, couple other things. UNLV. So I missed this one last week. I talked about one of the guys that they brought in, but I missed Dontrez Williams, who was a wing, second team all OVC. I believe he played at Lindenwood, scored 15 a game. Now the OVC is not a top flight mid-major, but you're scoring 15 a game. He looks like an athletic wing, and it's an upside guy for Pastner, right? He's got a few of them. Hopefully there's more to come, because he still has plenty of spots to fill in. Not sure, and I saw Jason was in here earlier. I'm going to have to hit Jason up and see who he projects right now as a starting lineup. Obviously, you have Tyron Jones and then Isaac Williamson, okay? And beyond that, is it, I mentioned him a minute ago, is it the Tyler Harris who got minutes early in the year at Vandy, but then the production wasn't there, so he kind of flamed out? The guy I mentioned last week, Jeremy Fumena, the 6'11" from UCF. I don't know that that's the guy, right? I thought fairly highly of two of the transfers that they brought in, Terrence Ford and MJ Thomas. But, are these guys that are like your go-to guys, right? Or is there somebody else that we're going to grab later? Hopefully, okay? Yeah, Pizza caught on to what I was saying a minute ago. Would not be surprised to see several Mountain West teams use 4 small and 1 big offenses routinely. It probably won't be super efficient against Gonzaga, but against most other schools, if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do, right? Like the mentioned it last week. No offense to those guys, but when JT Rock gets $1 million to go play Kansas State, when just 2 years ago he couldn't play at Iowa State in the same conference, there's just not a lot of bigs to be had for Pac and Mountain West schools. They're just not. Thank you for being here, T-Mac. You guys seem to be enjoying these live or delayed, and so we're going to do it. There's stuff to talk about. I love it. I did get over an hour here. I'm going to wrap it up soon. And then Boise. So this was last on the docket here with Boise. Some news from the Broncos this week. Kaur Toman. I'm sure I botched this one. I did not look this one up to see how it was pronounced. Kaur Toman. It's probably Toman. From Estonia, 18. Now, here's the deal with him. 6'9", skilled, right? And he looks the part physically. The problem is he blew his Achilles out, and he didn't have another one to replace it, right, in December. So he obviously missed the whole 2026. And from what I'm hearing and reading and seeing, he's not going to rush back and probably will not be able to practice once the season starts, okay, in September, October. So who knows what the deal is with him getting minutes this season, okay? Do not know. But as an 18-year-old, there's upside there being around a well-coached program like Leon has, right? Learning, putting some, time in around the program, rehabbing, getting himself ready to be available when, his Achilles is fine. Okay. Of more importance for Boise is the signing of Ty Rogers from Illinois. Now, if you're saying who, because I watched Illinois this year in the Final Four and he wasn't there. Well, he's missed the last 2 years. I think he was injured a couple years ago, and I think he redshirted this year. I don't know if he was injured or not, but there wasn't a lot of time for him this year. But that's not a bad thing. Illinois was in the Final Four. They were one of the best teams in the country all year. And Underwood brought in Europeans they were coming over during World War I or World War II. Okay, they were coming like crazy, right? And so there's no shame in Rogers not being able to get on the floor if that's what the case was this year, because he started 2 years ago. I guess it was 3 years ago now, in 2024, when they made the Elite Eight. Now, they lost that game by 100 to UConn, but they made the Elite Eight, and Rogers was a starter, okay? And so I think you'll take that, right? That's, you got excited about Fielder and Andrews last year. I'm not saying that Rogers is going to come in and average 18 a game and be like an alpha first-team all-conference guy, but he certainly is a winning player, like a veteran guy, a glue guy, a locker room guy, probably a guy. And apparently, too, I read this, maybe it was from one of BJ's tweets or somebody else, Leon having coaching experience on, an international team or an under 18 or whatever it was, is how the connection got kind of formed. And so when Rogers is looking for a place to play, Leon says, hey, why don't you try whatever? Awesome. Good. Okay. So this is he should, in my mind, be a starter. He kind of, no shade at him, but he's like an RJ Keene on steroids, right? He's a improved version of RJ because he's your glue guy. He's not going to need plays run for him. He's not going to get, attitude if he doesn't get his shots. This is my belief. I could be wrong, but he's not going to need to get 13 shots a game and go hunting for a shot if he doesn't get one for 7 minutes. He's going to do what the staff needs him to do. You're a glue guy, and if you get some points out of him, that's great. You'll get some, and he'll help you win ball games. So great pickup for Leon and the Broncos. I think that's fantastic. They're probably almost done with their roster. The other piece of news for Boise this week was they got a really good game against Nebraska in Sioux Falls. Now, I'm pretty good with geography. I'm thinking that's probably about similar distances, right? It's obviously north of Nebraska in South Dakota, and it's east of Boise from Idaho, right? And you're probably converging, right? I'm going to guess it's close to neutral. So we'll see who has the fan advantage. But regardless, you're looking at a quad one game. Nebraska, what do they do? I think they lost to Iowa in the Sweet 16, I believe, right? They had that very awesome game in the second round when they beat Vandy at the buzzer, right? And they lost then to Iowa in the Elite Eight. So you're playing a team that made the Sweet 16 this year. And, Hoiberg's got the program rolling. I'm sure they've taken some hits personnel-wise, but regardless, with a neutral, I don't see how it's not a quad one, okay? So great job by Leon getting that quad one, okay? T-Mac, really appreciate you donating there for your Aztecs. What do I think about European pros in the NCAA? So here's my thought is that it's not what college sports was intended to be, and that's why it wasn't for 60 years, right? But we're not really in the same era of college sports that we were 40, 30, 20 years ago. And, there's just no way to regulate it. There's no way to regulate it. So you have to get on, and that's just what Dutcher did. Your guy Dutcher did this. If you don't get on board, you get left behind. And Dutcher got on board. I don't know what assistant he put on it, right? Like I've seen some of the schools have guys just specifically going over there, right? You see that with Boise, see that with Nevada. You see it with some other schools, Grand Canyon. Guy goes over there to Europe, travel around, find some dudes, right? They're over there, okay? And that's what these guys are doing. So is it what college sports is meant to be? It's not, right? Not from the pro perspective. As far as the European thing goes, I don't have a problem with that. Like we've had plenty of Europeans going, they just haven't been pros before. So you put those two things together, and it's just what I said last week then. It just reinforces the fact that it really is like minor league sports, right? Because you think about what you said, T-Mac, they're pros. They're pros. So now you're coming from a pro league to an amateur league, because NCAA is amateur in its name. They haven't changed it yet. Now we know the players are getting paid, but like in what world do you go from playing in a pro league, whatever sport or job or field it is, to a non-pro? It just doesn't happen. So that just confirms that we're doing 6 says it'll be a sea of red there. I forgot. Very few travel like Nebraska. They do travel like crazy. I'll give them credit. They travel like crazy. I did miss a few comments on here. Nebraska, they travel really well. And yeah, I'm sure they'll dwarf the Boise. I wasn't sure how far the distance was. Boise is going to have a tall and long team. That's good. I did mention last week, because I keep forgetting about guys like Spencer Aarons, right? And Lathan is the other one. I mean, those are guys that it's like, if they bust, fantastic, right? If not, you want them to. The pizza man wants him red-shirted. I'm sure I was talking about the Tolman guy. Yeah, probably redshirt him. Creamy's excited for Ty. Sounds like a great character addition, leader, tenacious defender. Yeah, I mean, I said all that, and I forgot. I didn't even mention a defensive part, right? Like that'll fit right in with Leon. That's why I said he'll be a little bit better version of RJ. RJ was a good defender, but he wasn't going to give you much at all offensively. And I think Ty has that potential, but he is going to defend and be the leader for your team for sure. Nuclear proliferation. Everyone want to join the club. Yeah, I know. Everyone is going to want to join the club. You're referring to the European pros. Yeah, an idea award that would not be allowed in college sports, but no one would be left out, be out of disadvantage. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? I mean, especially once word gets back to these Europeans that, hey, and I think I said this last week, but they're paying you guys what to go play over there? 30 games? I don't know what their schedule's like in Europe, but I'm sure they're more than 30 games. They're paying you what over there? So, yeah, I mean, if you're in the A leagues of Spain and France and whatever, it's a little bit different. But if you're not, like, that's why these guys are coming from those other leagues that don't pay as much. They're paid, but not like they'll get paid over here. And so, yeah, if you don't get on the boat, you're going to get left behind. And so it's not what college sports is meant to be, but it's just changed. It's changed. Bleed Blue says Spencer is a beast. If they grow, well, hopefully Spencer, he needs to fill out. I'm sure he will, right? I mean, another year in the weight room there. Absolutely. Okay. Hour 15. That's plenty good here for this one. And I have lots in the holster for next week. So again, we'll talk the players era. We'll talk the Acrisure, all those MTEs. We'll talk about the rules email that I read, article that I read. We'll talk any other player movement that comes about in the next week, any other rules that come about in the next week. I still have the coaching discussion to go into. So we got lots of stuff going on around here. I do appreciate immensely you guys being here for all of it. One more time, subscribe. I know at the bottom there, we'll fix it. It's not Another Night in Mountain West anymore. It's Another Night Out West. If you're not subscribed already, please go subscribe, spread the word, get somebody else to subscribe too. As for sponsors, you see it down there in the bottom right, Sun Cruiser. Go get yourself some Sun Cruiser, plenty of flavors. Top left, you see Circa Sports. If you're headed out to Vegas, go to Circa Sports. Best sportsbook out there, mobile betting, best pool scene, stadium swim, anything you need. Guys trip, business, fun, friends, whatever, sun, water, drinks, can't beat it. Okay, happy Mother's Day once again to all of you mothers watching. I can't imagine how many there are. And to the rest of you, appreciate you guys as well. Wrap through with some of these. You guys came in. Nick, have a great week. You do the same. Hopefully some Lobo news next week. Yeah, it's been quiet. Thanks, Sick. Thanks for being here. Drew, thank you. Tell BJ thanks. BJ was in here earlier. He might have fallen asleep, but Players Era became the premier tournament, 100%. Yeah, we're going to break that guy down next week. Thank you, T-Mac, for being here. Thank all of you for being here. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy your week. Hopefully we get some more news. Check back. You got it, Creamy. And we'll see you guys next time here on Another Night Out West. See ya.